this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
What if mind control is real?
If you could control the behavior of anybody around you, what kind of life would you have?
Can you hypnotically persuade someone to buy a car?
When you look at your car, you're going to become overwhelmed with such good feelings.
Can you hypnotize someone into sleeping with you?
I gave her some suggestions to be sexually aroused.
Can you get someone to join your cult?
NLP was used on me to access my subconscious.
Mind Games, a new podcast exploring NLP, aka neuro-linguistic programming. Is it a self-help miracle, a shady hypnosis scam, or both? Listen to Mind Games on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You can scroll the headlines all day and still feel empty. I'm Ben Higgins, and If You Can Hear Me is where culture meets the soul. Honest conversations about identity, loss, purpose, peace, faith, and everything in between. Celebrities, thinkers, everyday people, some have answers, most are still figuring it out. And if you've ever felt like there has to be more to the story, this show is for you. Listen to If You Can Hear Me on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Special Agent Regal, Special Agent Bradley Hall.
In 2018, the FBI took down a ring of spies working for China's Ministry of State Security, one of the most mysterious intelligence agencies in the world.
The Sixth Bureau podcast is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to The Sixth Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, it's Jill Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And today I'm talking with my dear friend, Krista Williams.
It can change you in the best way possible. Dance with the change, dance with the breakdowns.
The embodiment of Pisces intuition with Capricorn power moves.
So I'm like delusionally proud of my chart.
Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Hi, everybody. Robert Evans here, and my novel, After the Revolution, is available for pre-order now from akpress.org. Now, if you go to akpress.org, you can find After the Revolution. Just Google akpress.org, After the Revolution. You'll find a list of participating indie bookstores selling my book, and if you pre-order now from either of these independent bookstores or from AK Press, you'll get a custom signed copy of the book, which I think is pretty cool. You can also pre-order it in physical or in Kindle form from Amazon or pretty much wherever books are sold. So please Google AK Press After the Revolution or find an indie bookstore in your area and pre-order it. You'll get a signed copy and you'll make me very happy. So this is episode 6. You know, we're, 8 hours into talking about Mr. Kissinger?
Oh, my God.
And, yeah.
I'd love to meet me from 8 hours ago. Like, buddy, it's like when Bill and Ted meet each other halfway through and they don't know the journey they're about to go upon.
Yeah.
Buddy, buckle up.
So the thing that Kissinger gets the most credit for that we haven't mentioned, we've talked about a bunch of the things that he gets credit for, is bringing peace to the Middle East. He does get credit for being that guy. Obviously, he did not do that. But he did play a significant role in stopping what had been a decades-long cycle of wars between Israel and the Arab nations around it. Now, to call that bringing peace would be ignoring a tremendous amount of ongoing violence against the Palestinian people. But Kissinger did help ensure, how there were all these different, everyone would invade, yada, yada, yada. There'd be a bunch of fighting. That doesn't really happen anymore, and Kissinger is part of why that doesn't happen anymore.
Okay.
The gist of it is that on October 6th, 1973, on Yom Kippur, Egypt and Syria launched a coordinated assault on Israel that for a time threatened the state's very existence. Kissinger had not spent much of his time working on Mideast-related stuff up to this point. This was partly because Nixon thought having a Jewish man negotiate with Arab countries would be a bad idea. Sure. It was also because Kissinger was kind of buried in Vietnam stuff, right? But by October of 73, negotiations with Hanoi had been concluded. U.S. forces had stepped back from an active role, and Kissinger had been awarded a Nobel Peace Prize with his Vietnamese counterpart, Lee Duc-Tho.
What?
Yes.
Absolutely. Now, I can't. There's no counter argument.
Absolutely, no. He nailed it.
What? I mean, the Nobel Peace Prize really doesn't. I mean, they must hit sometimes. I'm just familiar with a lot of the no's, though.
It seems mostly to be misses in my experience.
It's like when he got that's called the Nobel Peace Prize.
And you know who felt that way, Gareth? Lee Duc-To, who was also awarded the Nobel Peace Prize with Kissinger.
I don't want mine. I don't want mine.
Yeah, he literally was like, no, I'm not going to take it. The war isn't over yet. Like, all we've done is negotiate the U.S. no longer murdering people on the scale they had been.
And he was in charge of it.
Yeah. And specifically, he was angry because right before the armistice was signed, in order to try and force Hanoi to agree on some points, Kissinger orchestrated a massive nighttime bombing campaign on Christmas of Hanoi. They didn't bomb on Christmas Day, just the day before and a bunch of the days after, but it gets called the Christmas bombing campaign.
We're worried we'll hit Santa. I don't want that jolly blood on my hands.
So Lee Duc-To is like, I'm not going to take an award for peace with this guy.
Yeah.
Fuck him.
Yeah.
So Kissinger accepted it alone.
Oh my God. Good for him to not
He's such a cool dude. He's such a cool dude.
Wow.
More credit for me.
I can't believe I'm the only one who got it this year. I must be really good at this stuff.
So, yeah, he's like the Kanye of the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah, right. Sorry, you did great, but Kissinger had the best war of all time.
It would have been really funny if Henry Kissinger had, shoved Taylor Swift off stage.
Excuse me. You had a great war. You did great with peace, but come on. You're talking about the GOAT here, baby.
So by October of 73, Kissinger is free and clear and ready to get it on in the Middle East. And this actually went better than you might think. Weirdly enough, Henry Kissinger was probably one of the fairest negotiators the United States ever sent into that conflict. In fact, he was more or less in constant tension with Israel because he would do stuff like try to halt arms shipments there. Like during the Yom Kippur War, right? Israel's on a back foot. They're in real danger of being overrun. They want U.S. weapons and U.S. arms and a bunch more F-4 Phantom planes. And Nixon agrees to give them to him, but Kissinger's like, we're not giving them anything until they can arrange for commercial flights to ship the weapons to them. Because I'm trying to negotiate with Syria and Egypt. Wow. And if they see U.S. military aircraft landing in Jerusalem to give the Israelis weapons, that's going to fuck up my negotiations. Oh. So he's actually really unpopular with a lot of folks in Israel because he does stuff like this. And in fact, and obviously, like every U.S. negotiator in this conflict, Kissinger is more on Israel's side than anyone, but it's probably fair to say he's less on Israel's side than any other negotiator we ever put in there, which is weird.
That's fascinating.
It sounds like he's the most progressive because, obviously we could give a fuck now.
Well, he's not a Zionist for one thing. He doesn't have there's not a, he's Jewish, but he's not really that there is some amount of as a Holocaust survivor, he believes strongly that Israel needs to exist. So he does have that going for him. Again, he eventually agrees to ship them weapons on U.S. planes after it becomes enough of an issue. But he
still is that moment of principles.
The fact that there's any of that at all is weird. Yeah.
He probably had he probably had a little Nixon on his shoulder who was like, I know you're just going to be a Jew about this. And he was like, no, I will not. I will not devil Nixon.
It's weird how plugged in you are to how Nixon reacts to everything. Because that's exactly what goes on.
He's the spirit president.
Yeah. Oh, man. So Kissinger's best relationship in the Middle East wound up being with Anwar Sadat, the president of Egypt. The two were legitimately good buddies. They would kiss each other on the cheek. They liked each other.
I finally found the one.
Meanwhile, Kissinger and Golda Meir, which was the leader of Israel, had a really contentious relationship. At the end of the day, Kissinger, again, would always side with Israel on existential issues, but he wound up giving them a lot more shit than you might expect. Now, the fact that the U.S. eventually sends in arms turns the war around for Israel, which allows their forces to deal decisive blows to Egyptian and Syrian militaries. But once Israel was out of kind of the period of most risk for them as a state, Kissinger starts to push back on them even harder. He's particularly enraged at the fact that they kept attacking while he was trying to negotiate a ceasefire. And again, his main concern here, this is not because he just wants to stop the bloodletting. it's really important to him to negotiate a peace and it be seen as Henry Kissinger brought peace to the Middle East.
Right.
So he's pissed that they're fucking over his negotiations.
Yeah.
And he cares more about his reputation than he does about Israeli military success.
They're forgetting about the people of Kissinger.
Yes, exactly. The real chosen people. So when Israeli forces surround the Egyptian Third Army and encircle it, violating a ceasefire, Kissinger is livid. And he's particularly angry. We're not getting as much into this aspect of his beliefs, but his whole thing in this period, the reason as we talk about in our China episode, and this like three-way diplomacy thing that he deals with China and the Soviet Union, he wants what's called a balance of power. That's his whole thing. He's a big Cold Warrior. Obviously, he overthrows a lot of communist governments, but he's not one of these people who thinks we can eliminate communism. Instead, he really wants like this balance of power, and he wants a balance of power in the Middle East between Israel and her neighbors too. And he's livid about, in part, that they violated the ceasefire, but he's also worried that if the Israelis wipe out the Egyptian Third Army, that's going to mean Egypt is humiliated. And if they're humiliated, Sadat can't actually make peace, and there's going to be another war. And I want to try and stop the next war.
Plus, we're BFFing so hard right now.
Yeah, we're so good friends. But he is like broadly on the right side of this.
Right.
Yeah, over the course of several chaotic days, he makes numerous trips between each of the belligerent nations in this war, negotiating with their heads of state. And one of his primary tactics is to mock whoever he'd just been talking to when he's in front of the next person. So, he is that guy.
He's an MC.
Yeah. When he's dealing with Hafez Assad or Anwar Sadat, this means talking shit about the Israelis and often Jewish people in general to get on their good side.
Wow.
So when Israel violates that ceasefire, he is heard to complain in a meeting, quote, "If it were not for the accident of my birth, I would be anti-Semitic."
Oh my God. Wow.
On another occasion, he says, quote, and I need to remind you, this is a Holocaust survivor saying this.
Oh boy.
Any people who have been persecuted for 2,000 years must be doing something wrong.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
He fucking said that.
Wow.
Holy shit, man. We are just such fucking assholes. Huh?
I'm just gosh, listen, I'm on fire. I'm just riffing right now. This is some good thing. Someone write this down. Oh, don't worry, I'm wiretapping myself.
He kills at the clubs in Damascus.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And yet he is actually really popular with not all, because there are we have quotes from other people who are particularly other Egyptian military leaders under Sadat who are well, Sadat's fallen for it. He's obviously just saying whatever he thinks will make us like him.
Right.
He doesn't, clearly he can't believe this shit. He's just trying to,
Right.
There are people who see through it, but he's able to trick the folks who matter, which is, in this case, are Sadat and Hafez.
Right.
So all that aside, this period is, again, broadly speaking, the one where Kissinger does the most actual good, but it's worth noting that even when he's on the right side of things, I think negotiating an end to a war is generally the right thing to do when there's a war. But even when he's on the right side of things, his ego plays a massive and often toxic role in how everything shakes out. See, while all this is going on, Nixon is barreling towards impeachment. And a big part of why he's constantly over there, while all of the big milestones in the Watergate case hit, when Nixon is ordering the cover up and shit and doing the things that will get him impeached, Kissinger's always away. He's very studiously, as soon as the story breaks, I need to be overseas as much as fucking possible.
So is it possible he's competently trying to negotiate Middle East peace because he's trying to save his own ass and doesn't want...
Yeah, that is literally what's going on. Because he's not a dumb man. He sees that Nixon is fucked.
So he's like, well, I can't just be doing nothing.
Yeah.
Listen, why don't I actually try to make this work, I guess? I'm in a lot of trouble domestically.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. He wants to, because part of it is he doesn't want to be near Nixon because Nixon's toxic. And part of it is well, if the last thing everyone remembers about Henry while Nixon is going down is that he ended war in the Middle East, I'm going to keep being Secretary of State. You know?
There's a friend of mine who had this theory when he was he said or it might even be a bit, I don't remember, but when he's in a ride share, he won't talk and then the last 2 minutes, he'll just take great interest, so he leaves on a real high note. And so it's like he's kind of like distant and not really doing much, and then the last 2 minutes will be like, oh, that sounds great. Well, good luck with your family. And then so that's kind of like he's just trying to leave, like
leave on a high note.
So the last thing he's going to try to do is actually decent after a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, when I enter a party, I set off an IED at the start of it, so everyone's really like shaken up. But then at the end, I hand out a 6-pack of beer, and that means everybody's like,
hey, that was the guy who dropped the IED. Oh, come on, he's the 6-pack guy, in my opinion. That's who that guy is.
That is how Henry Kissinger handles everything. So now again, but here's the thing: the fact that like this is all existential for Henry, right? Ending the war in between Israel and her neighbors is like he knows he has to do this or he's not going to keep his gig. So not only is he trying to negotiate peace, but he can't let anyone else play a role in bringing peace to the Middle East, right? Because this is his job interview. And you know how Henry Kissinger treats job. You've seen what he'll do for a job interview, right?
Name something he won't do to get a job. Yeah. I'd like to see that list.
So this becomes a problem while this is all going on, this Egyptian and Israeli general, you've got this massive encircled Egyptian army, the Egyptian general in charge of that and the Israeli general, like, meet each other in the field between their armies and like sit down and start negotiating a ceasefire and figuring out how to pull, like they start like talk like people, like it's one of these weird moments in military history where these guys are like, I think we can work something out. Like we don't need to be doing this anymore.
Who's that guy running? Quiet, you guys, be quiet! Go back
Shut up!
And no more talking! Shut the fuck
Shoot
up!
a bit!
Kill them quick!
So Henry is enraged when he hears this happening, and he And he starts, again, all these people who, like, in any other situation, neither, like, an Israeli general or an Egyptian general in the 1970s, not guys you would expect to be the voices of reason, but because Kissinger's in the story.
Oh, my God.
So he starts maneuvering to make these guys shut the fuck up. He sends a letter to the Israeli ambassador asking, what is Yarev's the Israeli general, selling here? Tell him to stop. Suppose Yarev comes out a great hero on disengagement. What do you discuss on December 18th, which is the next round of negotiations?
Oh, my God.
He's such a...
Yeah, I mean, it's just what a heinous asshole. I mean, I feel like he could still tilt the credit towards him, but he's like, I want my fingerprint solely on this.
I don't want to like get too into like what might have happened because I'm not an expert on either Egyptian or Israeli military history, but you have to think maybe it would have been good if like an Israeli general and an Egyptian general had like brought peace to the conflict. And like maybe that had like been part of like the military legacy in the area. Might have been nice. I don't know.
You realize we're staring down the barrel of a tragedy right now. I might not be recognized as the one who did this.
So Kissinger, a biography, continues the story. Quote, at Kissinger's behest, both Sadat and Meir reined in their generals at the Kilometer 101 talks. That's like where this army is encircled. Okay. The Israeli ambassador, although a Kissinger partisan, felt that it was largely a matter of ego. Kissinger's view was that if any concessions were to be made, they should be made by him, Dinitz recalled. He was very upset when he found out that things were actually being settled by the generals at Kilometer 101. We had to make them stop. Ego was a weakness of his, but it was also the source of his greatness. Which I might quibble with. But.
Ego was a weakness is understating.
Yes.
I would like to call it an airstrike.
Can we kill both generals?
I think we're going to need to find new generals. These guys are getting along way too well, and I wasn't there.
Listen, Dick, I know the Watergate stuff has you, but can we invade both countries?
For sure. Will you come play at camp? Come play camp.
So, to his sort of credit, though, the peace that Henry helped negotiate to end the Yom Kippur War would prove to be durable, and it set up diplomatic relations between Egypt and Israel for the next time. There's this very powerful moment when, like, Golda Meir, because, like, Sadat still can't talk directly to Israel. There's a whole, like, diplomatic thing going on.
Right.
But he tells Kissinger to tell her, like, I'm taking off my military uniform and I'm never going to wear it again, basically. Like, things do, like, this is a really, like, good move in a lot of ways. Obviously, that you could say this also like paves the way for nobody ever coming to help the Palestinians again, which is worth noting. But it does bring an end to this series of like constant wars.
What an amazing risk to take, though. To be like, you guys stop. We'll do my version.
We gotta do it my way.
My way.
Yeah.
I'm the Frank Sinatra of Middle East peace negotiations.
That is kind of the reputation he gets, because obviously this plays incredibly well for Americans. And so Kissinger is seen as still this like massive hero, even while this is a big part of why he's so popular, even as the rest of the admin goes down in flames. Now, this inaugurates a period of what comes to be known as shuttle diplomacy. That's a term you'll hear associated with Kissinger all the time. And it's him fly all these different countries in the Middle East and in Africa, him flying from like capital to capital for weeks on end, doing these negotiations where he's always the man in the center of things. Henry actually kind of grew addicted to throwing himself in the middle of international crises and flying nonstop between capitals to do these negotiations. It was this and the popularity he earned from being seen as a peacemaker that guaranteed him to keep his job in Ford's cabinet. One of the few upsides to Kissinger's career prior to the 70s is that he hadn't really fucked with Africa to any appreciable degree. Now, this is not because Henry Kissinger would have an issue with fucking with Africa, but it is because the U.S., we didn't have a huge footprint in the continent until the 60s. You know,
I'm
that's just
swamped right now.
There's so much going on.
So many countries to ruin.
Yeah. Yeah, this is like him learning Spanish. He just never found the time.
Look, maybe when I'm a little older and I get the chance, I can ruin Africa, but my God.
So, the U.S. footprint in Africa started up when the CIA, in the early 60s, I think, when the CIA murdered or allowed other people to murder, it's a little unclear, Patrice Lumumba, the left-wing democratically elected leader of the Congo. The U.S. backed a right-wing general, even calling him, right and left are less useful terms in this, but we back a general called Joseph Mobutu, who proceeded to spend the next couple decades robbing the country blind.
It seems like a pattern.
Yeah, it happened. It's weird that it keeps happening all the time. While there was other U.S. fuckery in Africa throughout the 60s and early 70s, it stayed at a fairly low ebb until April of 1975, when Saigon fell to North Vietnam, now known as just Vietnam. 1975 was known by some in the media as the Year of Intelligence, not because any particularly good decisions were being made, but because Congress was investigating the presidency over Watergate, and there was this big flood of public questions about clandestine foreign actions carried out under the aegis of Cold War politics. A lot of the stuff we were talking about in episodes like 2, 3, and 4 had started to leak by this point, and so people are like, there's this big national discussion about what should we be doing should we have a CIA? Should we maybe, and there are the CIA gets there's a reforming of the CIA that occurs in this period.
That always works.
And it held.
Yeah, you can question the degree to which it mattered.
And it held.
Yeah. It may have made them less good at doing the bad things that they did. But not for lack of trying.
Hard to imagine.
It's the reform in the CIA is the difference between overthrowing Salvador Allende and those U.S. guys pissing themselves in Venezuela after getting arrested by fishermen.
Right. Wow.
For Henry Kissinger, though, the Year of Intelligence was a year where he spent trying to reorient the United States towards a new anti-communist conflict. His target this time was the nation of Angola. Now, Angola is a mid-sized African nation located on the southwest coast of the continent, directly under the Congo and directly above Namibia. It's close enough to South Africa to get fucked with, but not so close that they can just send troops right over the border, which is a better place to be than directly bordering South Africa in this period. In 1961, the people there decided to have themselves a good old-fashioned war of independence, which lasted 13 years, killed tens of thousands of people, and only ended when a coup overthrew the dictator of Portugal. Now, this coup was, by the way, very weird. Most sources will describe it as a left-wing coup against the dictator. The reality is a lot more muddled. The guy who winds up in charge of Portugal on paper is a monocle-wearing general who's
I love him already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in.
And he's not really leftist, but the powers behind him are some very left-wing army officers. They form a new democratic government, which includes several elected communist leaders. So Portugal has elected communist deputies now.
Okay.
Henry Kissinger flips the fuck out at this. He is certain the country will fall to Soviet influence. Interestingly, this détente he's worked at with the Soviets, a big part of it is this idea that the Soviets have their sphere of influence in the East, and we have the West has its sphere of influence in Western Europe. And the Soviets kind of hold to that here because they don't get involved in Portugal. They don't try to push things further in their direction. Henry is convinced they're going to, and is absolutely wrong.
He caught paranoia from Nixon. He was like,
yeah. Portugal eventually elects other people. Again, the government stays fairly left-wing by his standards, but it does not, as you might notice, it does not join the Iron Curtain,
Yeah, right.
Kissinger is just we have some quotes from him. He's absolutely certain that they're about to go full Stalinist, because again, he's wrong about most things, actually. Mm-hmm. He does not have a good understanding of what's going to happen anywhere.
No, it's just almost at this point, he's hung around so long that you're kind of just I guess he must know. I mean, he won a Nobel Peace Prize. He must know something.
I think it's worth looking at what happens, Henry's expectations for what's going to happen in Portugal versus what happens, and then think back to Chile, where Henry's Allende is going to lead to, they're going to go full communist, and it's going to be, no, maybe if Allende had stayed in power, there just wouldn't have been a dictator, and things would have been fine, and they would have had a lot less problems than they.
And let's see the communist version play out. How many people die in the communist version?
Yeah,
probably less. The puppets that we put in power are not these amazing peacekeepers. It's just we're like the Midas of genocides.
Yeah, exactly. So the biggest international result of the coup is that the new Portuguese government had no stomach for colonies, right? They negotiate a treaty with the three largest militant groups in Angola in 1975. These were the FNLA, the MPLA, and UNITA. The non-acronym names of all these groups are in French. I'm not even going to try that.
Dave, you can do it. Dave has
absolutely not. What you need to know is that the MPLA were Marxists, right? Kind of Marxists. They were formed, at least the organization had been formed by members of Angola's intelligentsia who were Marxist, and Marxism had a big influence on the MPLA. Unfortunately, meanwhile, so that's one faction. The FNLA and UNITA are generally described as being right-wing groups, but this is one of those things where grafting Western political terms onto the civil war in Angola does not work great. All of these groups, even the ostensibly Marxist MPLA, are very tribal in origin. And by that I mean they are based on specific tribal grievances and tribal arguments, right, that are going on in the region, as opposed to being clearly well, we're pro-communist or we're anti-communist. That's really less of what's going on.
We're getting shirts made.
Yeah. Yeah. For an example of how useless a strict ideological lens is here, UNITA was initially very left-wing in its messaging, attacking the United States as, quote, the notorious agents of imperialism. UNITA's fighters were literally trained by North Korean soldiers. But by the end of the civil war in Angola, they had been receiving arms from the Reagan administration for years, brokered via their paid representative, Paul Manafort.
Oh my God. What the hell?
That's the kind of war this is, where UNITA starts off being we're going to end American imperialism, and by the end they're Paul Manafort, get us weapons.
If you're going to a party, get next to this Manafort character. He is a good time.
For just to show you how weird this is, technically in the Angolan Civil War, Paul Manafort and North Korea are on the same side.
I feel like Paul Manafort's 250 years old.
Yeah. I mean, and by the end, it is fair to say that, by the end of the Civil War, UNITA's, leader, Jonas Savimbi, is calling himself an anti-communist. That's his messaging. But he's less about anti-communism than, again, there's specific local grievances he has with the MPLA. And, that's more why they're fighting than that he, believes strongly in anti-communism. He just knows that's how you get weapons.
Right, okay, that's right. He's just speaking the language, right.
Yeah, and when North Korea is training his guys, he's not into juche, he's he wants the dudes to train his guys. Yeah,
right.
Now, the FNLA is led by a guy named, and that's the other usually called a right-wing faction, is led by a guy named Holden Roberto, who used to work with Savimbi before Savimbi formed UNITA. I know this is a very complicated conflict, I'm sorry. They're generally described as right-wing, and they did receive aid from the CIA. So that would definitely right-wing getting aid from the CIA. They also got military aid from China, Romania, India, Algeria, Zaire, the AFL-CIO, and the Ford Foundation, or at least aid of some sort. The sides here are just fucking baffling.
They're like the Tinder swindler. They're just working every side.
Yeah, China, the CIA, and the AFL-CIO shaking hands over backing the
finally getting some
FNLA.
agreement. Yeah. It's like Big Brother.
Wait, you guys here too? I didn't know you were here. This is amazing.
The Ford Foundation.
Well.
Hi, this is Jill Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And I just sat down with a Mini Driver.
The Irish traveller said when I was 16, you're going to have a terrible time with men.
Actor, storyteller, and unapologetic Aquarian visionary. Aquarius is all about freedom loving and different perspectives. And I find a lot of people with strong placements in Aquarius are misunderstood. A Sun and Venus in Aquarius in her 7th house spark her unconventional approach to partnership.
He really has taught me to embrace people sleeping in different rooms, on different houses, in different places, but just an embracing of the isness of it all.
If you're navigating your own transformation or just want a chart side view into how a leading artist integrates astrology, creativity, and real life, this episode is a must listen. Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
What do you do when the headlines don't explain what's happening inside of you? I'm Ben Higgins, and if you can hear me, is where culture meets the soul, a place for real conversation. Each episode, I sit down with people from all walks of life, celebrities, thinkers, and everyday folks, and we go deeper than the polished story. We talk about what drives us, what shapes us, and what gives us hope. We get honest about the big stuff: identity when you don't recognize yourself anymore, loss that changes you, purpose when success isn't enough, peace when your mind won't slow down, faith when it's complicated. Some guests have answers. Most are still figuring it out. If you've ever felt like there has to be more to the story, this show is for you. Listen to If You Can Hear Me on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
In 2023, a story gripped the UK, evoking horror and disbelief.
The nurse who should have been in charge of caring for tiny babies is now the most prolific child killer in modern British history.
Everyone thought they knew how it ended. A verdict, a villain, a nurse named Lucy Letby.
Lucy Letby has been found guilty.
But what if we didn't get the whole story?
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapses.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby, we follow the evidence and hear from the people that lived it to ask what really happened when the world decided who Lucy Letby was.
No voicing of any skepticism or doubt.
It'll cause so much harm at every single level of the British establishment of this is wrong.
Listen to Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
China's Ministry of State Security is one of the most mysterious and powerful spy agencies in the world. But in 2017, the FBI got inside.
This is Special Agent Regal, Special Agent Bradley Hall.
This MSS officer has no idea the U.S. government is onto him. But the FBI has his chats, texts, emails, even his personal diary. Hear how they got it on the 6th Bureau podcast.
I now have several terabytes of an MSS officer, no doubt, no question, of his life. And that's a unicorn.
No one had ever seen anything like that. It was unbelievable.
This is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to the 6th Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
The MPLA, which these, again, are the kind of Marxist guys, and if you're, of the three factions, they are the ones who most do believe in, a political thing that, we would recognize in terms of, left-right sides. They are partly armed by the Soviet Union, which should not be surprising, but most of their military aid comes from Cuba. And we're not really going to get into it, but it's worth noting, how substantial Cuban aid is to the MPLA. Cuba starts sending soldiers to Angola in November of 75, and by 1988, they had more than 55,000 soldiers in the country.
Wow.
And, That's a trek. I don't know if you guys know this, but Cuba and the west coast of Africa, not super close.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit of a jaunt. Yeah. And that's also a long involvement. You know, they're in there more than a decade. There's a lot of commitment here. So as is generally
It's actually
the case,
Cuba now, to be fair. So
as is generally the case, all of the communists were not in agreement about Angola. The People's Republic of China did not particularly care about like a left-wing struggle in Angola. They wanted to keep Soviet power at bay on a continent where they were starting to do some business themselves. So China and the US worked together to support the FNLA and UNITA. This is exactly the sort of thing Kissinger had been going for when he pushed to connect the US diplomatically to China. I want to quote now from a write-up by Maria Guda of Wilfrid Laurier University. Quote, "This was part of Kissinger's grand strategy of triangular diplomacy. Triangular diplomacy was essentially the U.S. exploiting the relationship between Communist China and the Soviet Union to create a three-way détente between the countries, with the U.S. at the helm. Kissinger was not pushing for covert operations through the CIA in order to elevate American standing in China, because Nixon and Kissinger were orchestrating something larger. This was to use China as a counterweight against the Soviets. Kissinger's emphasis on triangular diplomacy caused him to view regional conflict in terms of involvement on the Chinese and the Soviets, not in terms of a local struggle." So he very much sees this as a battleground between different ideologies. But anyone who knows anything about the Angola Civil War knows that, like, no, that's not really what's going on. Like, everyone is in here, and it is certainly not, like, about what kind of political shit individual parties believe. Yeah, the side, you can't graph these easily onto like a Western axis. But as Isaacson writes, Angola became, quote, "a vivid example of Kissinger's tendency to see complex local struggles in an East-West context. In all respect to Kissinger," wrote Jonathan Quitney in his study of the Angolan War, "one really has to question the sanity of someone who looks at an ancient tribal dispute over control of distant coffee fields and sees it as a Soviet threat to the security of the United States."
I mean, what a guy.
Yeah.
To be able to... It's like, I mean, it's also, I mean, it's so, again, I mean, the ego on this fucking dude to be able to just go into massive conflicts, have no clue, and make it that binary and think that he's doing anything. I mean, he's just so emboldened.
Yeah, he's emboldened. He's so arrogant that he's like, well...
Would you guys do me a favor? Could some of you wear red shirts and some of you wear blue so we could kind of stuff? Let's do shirt skins, huh?
Yeah, I don't need to Henry Kissinger, don't need to understand the actual dimensions of why these sides are fighting.
Yeah.
I can just assume that it graphs onto every other conflict I've ever cared about.
Yeah, knowledge is weakness.
Yeah. And this is he's not the only American to be arrogant in this specific way about a conflict in Africa,
but
right?
He's the last. He's the last one.
He would be the last,
he's the
thank
last.
God.
Since then.
So CIA funding for UNITA and the FNLA was initially quite low, but Kissinger pushed for an escalation, and soon the agency had poured $22 million in covert support for both of these groups. Kissinger felt they were thinking small, though. He believed that after suffering a public defeat in Vietnam, U.S. foreign policy needed a comeback, and Angola was... Yeah, baby! Yeah!
Come back!
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what a better place than Angola when everybody cares. Every American's like, what are
everyone's
we doing in
plugged
Angola?
in.
You're gonna love my new stuff.
Mm-hmm. The problem with Vietnam is that it was too distant from American concerns. Angola!
That's it. That's the problem.
Now, so he believes that Angola is going to be our fucking comeback tour. It's the equivalent of, I don't know, one of the times Elton John did a farewell tour. I guess, something like that.
He's on his ninth.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities between Henry Kissinger and Elton John's musical career.
Yeah, bombing and the Jets.
Yeah, actually, Tiny Dancer, that song is about about Henry Kissinger. Yeah, he is the Tiny Dancer. He is a little guy. So yeah, Kissinger wants to prove that the United States is still a global power, and he also wants to prove that Henry Kissinger is still a Secretary of State with some teeth.
Oh, God.
He's just ceded a bunch to the fucking in these negotiations with Vietnam. He's
we need to bring peace of mind to Henry Kissinger.
Yeah. He is everyone is going to see Vietnam as an L for me.
So I need a win, baby.
So, yeah, you could kind of see his attitude in Angola as like the powerful sociopath version of buying a sports car to impress like 20-year-olds.
Right.
Like when you're, an old man.
Yeah, right. He's in his midlife war crisis.
And the people around Kissinger are a lot less bullish about escalating involvement in Angola. And in fact, this includes like the fucking CIA.
But they had really big shoes to fill, to be fair.
Yeah, they're just like, we don't want any part of this right now.
Wow, you guys are really negative.
You guys, it's Angola.
It's Angola.
Where's the wind?
Gotta be a fucking hole-in-one, baby. In June of 75, Kissinger holds a meeting with President Ford, the defense secretary, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the head of the CIA. They discuss the invasion of Angola, and while most of that meeting is still classified, we know Kissinger urged what he called a diplomatic offensive. Quote, "If we appeal to the Soviets to not be active, it will be a sign of weakness." He played on stereotypes of Africa as mysterious and wild, claiming, "It is an area where no one can be sure of its judgments." Next, Gouda writes, quote, "Revealing his talent for manipulation, Kissinger used daunting and dramatic language to illustrate the situation in Angola as he saw it. By giving the impression that there was no way to tell how the Angolan Civil War would play out, Kissinger pushed forward the idea that the U.S. had better get involved in Angola through tangible or covert means before it was too late. The U.S., through the CIA, needed to support the FNLA and UNITA to prevent the dominance of the Soviet-backed MPLA. This view wholly disregards the idea that the Angolan Civil War was indeed that, a civil war. Kissinger was positioning Angola in a wider East versus West context."
Oh my God! You got Biggie, you got Tupac. These guys. I mean, only the United States can want to be in. Like, only the United States can be sold on getting involved in a conflict where he's like, "We have no clue what's going on, so we got to get our hats."
We got to really throw our dicks in this one.
Come on, guys, let's get moving. It could be crazy.
This is one where, like, the U.S. actually doesn't really want to get involved. Like, this Kissinger is the one pulling everyone else in here.
He's a marketing wizard.
Yeah. And based on his urgings, the CIA comes up with a plan called IA Feature. It was a covert paramilitary operation in which U.S. military advisors and special forces would be sent to Angola in a manner basically identical to how U.S. involvement in Vietnam started. Okay. Kissinger's literally like, "Let's do that again, baby."
Let's see. It goes pretty good when we do it.
This is how I get to bomb Namibia.
That's on my vision board.
He has dreams of flattening the Congo.
I woke up. I thought that I had done it.
Now, despite the fact that the CIA did come up with this plan at his behest, there's intense resistance within the agency, a lot of whom think Kissinger has lost his fucking mind. And thus, CIA Director William Colby joins our pantheon of bad guys who seem reasonable because Henry Kissinger is involved.
Right.
So Colby is like pretty rattled by how Vietnam ended. And also by the fact that there's all these congressional inquiries into like the CIA doing a bunch of other terrible shit, right? They're actively being investigated right now.
Right.
So this isn't Colby being a good guy. This is Colby being like, "Oh, I don't want to drive when I've got, shit in the car," basically, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm holding right now. You know what?
Honestly, any other time, I'm just fucking Angola up like crazy. Like I'm just fucking going nuts. But it's just not the right time. We got a lot of people looking at us.
Yeah.
He's the guy who's like, Kissinger's like on a casino floor and he's been cheating and like the security's gathered and they're whispering and pointing at him. He notices and he's still playing.
Yeah, he keeps going. He's going to let it ride on black one more time.
How many times do I have to say hit me?
So the 40 committee, which again Kissinger heads, approves IA Feature, but William Colby is like, "Okay, but I'm going to insist we actually go to Congress to have the funds appropriated for this secret option."
Oh, that branch?
Those guys?
What?
Are they still here?
Oh my God. You are old-fashioned, Colby.
So while Kissinger argues for his covert operators, South Africa sends troops in to support the FNLA and UNITA, who had again originally been trained by North Korea. So there's FNLA troops who receive training from both South Africa and North Korea.
Jesus.
This is just a very weird war. So China has the reaction we're all having and is like, "You know what? This is too messy for me. I don't even need this right now. Like, I got other shit going on." Right. And they kind of bounce from the situation.
Okay.
The Soviets and the Cubans, though, extend more aid to the MPLA, who win the war handily and install themselves in the capital, Luanda, by the end of 1975. So a few weeks after this, the CIA holds an interagency working group meeting with Kissinger to discuss how to ask Congress to send in U.S. advisors. And like at this point, the war is lost, and Kissinger's like, no, we got to get some guys in there.
Come on, guys.
No one else wants this, right? Everyone else is like, this seems like way more of a hassle.
He's showing up to the party at like 2:45 a.m.
Come on, let's keep going. Let's do shots.
What do you mean the keg's tapped?
Yeah, the CIA is already puking from how much they've had to drink in Vietnam and Chile and shit.
Who wants to do tequilas?
Come on, I brought absinthe.
Let's go. Poopers.
So Kissinger, they have this meeting, and Kissinger has a meeting with one of this, like a guy in this with this a bunch of people, and then like they hold a separate meeting afterwards with the CIA about what Kissinger had said. So they're basically
having the side meetings on Kissinger now.
Yeah, so basically they present Kissinger with a report on like what would have to be done to send U.S. advisors into Angola, and Kissinger reads the report, and rather than giving a yes or a no, he grunts and walks out of his office. Wow. So after this, all of these CIA guys have to sit down and decide like, what does Henry Kissinger grunting mean?
We've bought in
was
our
this a yes or a no?
This guy is really good at deciphering what Henry grunts mean. Well, gentlemen, it was a pretty long grunt, which is never good. It's a sigh grunt, which for Henry means he's a little agitated.
I'm going to quote writing about this meeting, Kissinger, a biography by Walter Isaacson. Everyone found this rather disconcerting, especially since Kissinger was heading off for Beijing. Well, someone asked, was it a positive grunt or a negative grunt? Mulcahy paused. It was just a grunt, he explained. Like, oomph. I mean, it didn't go up or down. Stockwell, the agent in charge, marveled as a group of somber officials supervising the nation's only extant war sat around a table trying to decipher a Kissinger grunt. Mulcahy provided his imitation of the grunt once again, emphasizing its flatness. Someone else at the other end of the table tried it. There were a few experiments contrasting positive grunts with the voice rising, then a negative one with the voice falling. Different people attempted it. Well, asked the CIA officer who was chairing the meeting, do we proceed with the advisors? Mulcahy scowled and puffed on his pipe. We'd better not, he finally said, trying to decipher his boss's mind. Kissinger just decided not to send Americans into the Sinai. There were a lot of nods. The request for advisors was shelved. It was an amazing way to run a war, Mulcahy said years later as he recalled the incident.
Oh, yeah. By the way, they accidentally wrote a Home Improvement script at the end of this.
This is actually where the pilot to that show came from.
Of Tim the Toolman Taylor. It was like, no, it was like,
yeah.
Okay, that sounds a little more positive.
Yeah. It's just like, what a moment for the United States.
Well,
all these fucking spooks with blood on their hands being like, well, was it like, or like, you know?
I mean, because you do, at least at some point in your existence, for the most part, you do believe that when someone is saying the Central Intelligence Agency, that it is really like working on intelligence and is intelligent and is a body that is actually, processing information that potentially you don't have access to. And instead, they're just sitting around a fucking table going like, do the grunt again, Jim.
Yeah.
The grunt again.
It reveals, and this is, I think, where a lot of folks on the left kind of mix up viewing the CIA as like hyper competent. Yeah. And it's where a lot of people everywhere fuck up viewing Kissinger as hyper competent. Like, no, they have a lot of power and they use it badly. But like at the end of the day, Kissinger doesn't have the balls to like say yes or no on something. And so he grunts. And then all of these fucking, again, bloody handed monsters spend an entire meeting like repeating the grunt and trying to figure out if it means yes or no. Like,
and there's no, like, it's so unchecked. I mean, like it still is that, but it's just, there's nobody there to be like, hey, this is fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Instead, they're like, do the grunt again.
Try the grunt again. Yes or no?
Dan had the best grunt. Dan, do it again, because I want to play it slow for everyone.
That's a maybe to me, bro.
While I think it sounds ambivalent, having known Henry for a little while, he's pissed.
So the CIA's request for another $28 million in funding and the discussion of sending in advisors was again leaked to Seymour Hersh. Congress cut off all aid. He puts out an article about it. Congress cuts off aid to Angola as a result of this. Kissinger does not get his way, but the CIA money he'd already funneled into UNITA helped the group stay alive. The Angolan Civil War did not officially end until 2002. Although, again, this is one of those things. This is a really nasty civil war. It lasts a ridiculous amount of time. Kissinger gets a lot of the blame, but we should also note that, like, Paul Manafort is much more on this. Like, he is the guy. Manafort's the guy who brings Savimbi to D.C. and gets Reagan to send a fuckload of weapons over to, like, really escalate things.
Thank God for Reagan.
Yeah, thank God for Reagan. But it is amazing that this fucking goes on until 2002.
Crazy.
That's insane.
Yeah.
What a legacy.
Mm-hmm. What a legacy. So I have teased y'all that Kissinger has a Rhodesia connection. And yet again, the funniest thing about this is that it's one of the least fucked up things he's ever involved in. But the story is kind of funny, so I'm going to tell it anyway.
Okay.
So, in Rhodesia, you've got this country where about 8% of the population, at the height of like white population in Rhodesia, about 8% of them are white, but they hold effectively 100% of the political power. This obviously is not something a lot of the black people living there like.
Sure.
For reasons I don't think I need to explain.
No.
So some of them decide to fight back, and there's a number of rebel groups, and soon an ugly insurgent war between the Rhodesian government, which, by the way, is an international pariah, right? They're like actually not supposed to exist, basically. So no one can legally sell them arms, so everything has to get like smuggled through South Africa, and the Soldier of Fortune magazine winds up sending a bunch of fighters over. William F. Buckley Jr. or William F. Buckley raises money for them. Yada, yada, yada. Very nasty war. We've talked about it in other episodes.
The GoFundMe war.
Yeah, it is a GoFundMe war. So by the time Kissinger is in office, the white minority government of Rhodesia has spent years locked into the losing side of a grinding insurgent campaign. The international community widely condemns Rhodesia as an apartheid state, and there's a bunch of arms embargoes. And in fact, pretty much everyone hates Rhodesia except for South Africa and the U.S. right wing, who see the Rhodesies as anti-communist crusaders.
Sure.
Kissinger was locked into an awkward position here. He wanted to negotiate an end to the fighting and an end to the white supremacist government of Rhodesia, but he also doesn't want to piss off his right-wing base too much, you know? This is like a really messy situation for Henry.
Yeah, of course.
So, policy towards Rhodesia in the Nixon years. There's a plan Nixon approved for South Africa in 1969 that is like U.S. policy in Rhodesia for nearly a decade, and it is literally called, I am sorry for saying this, but Nixon calls U.S. plans, like the U.S. stance towards Rhodesia, quote, the tar baby option.
Oh, my
I gotta
God.
go. See you guys later. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Oh, my God.
At least there's no stream of white supremacy through American power.
No, this was the one time.
It's like, I can't believe the guy fucking recorded himself for...
This is not just recorded himself. This isn't just like Nixon saying a slur in a conversation with his buds.
No,
this is official U.S. government policy.
These are title pitches, yeah.
We write this out places.
Someone wrote it down and was like, I'll hand it in if you're sure, Mr. President. No, it seems pretty good to me.
And this is not just towards Rhodesia. This is towards all of like South Africa too, these like white minority governments in Africa. And the premise is that, quote, the whites are here to stay, and the only way that constructive change can come is through them. So,
I mean, it's so... and it really hasn't changed that much. We just have fancier titles.
Yeah, we don't put the slurs right in the title anymore.
Yeah, no. We don't record the president, and we don't put the slurs in the title.
So the policy is sold to American liberals and moderates by basically saying the only way to liberate black Africans is to improve their economic outcomes through trade, and that means dealing with the white governments, right? Because if we were to just,
I mean,
it's really bleak.
All we did, we
really
just changed it to tech. We've just changed it to tech, essentially.
Yeah. We would maintain, the document declared, public opposition to racial repression, but relax political isolation and economic restrictions on the white states.
I mean, it's fucking crazy. Like, the problem here is that people don't like the 8% white people that run the entire fucking place.
It's one of those, we continue and we'll always have debates over like sanctions and like when they're good and bad ideas.
Yeah.
But the argument here is that like we can't sanction South Africa and Rhodesia because it'll hurt black people. And the degree to which that's a lie is that, like, well, you're saying we have to start selling them fucking weapons so that they can oppress black people in order to improve economic outcomes for black people.
Right.
And perhaps that's fucking insane.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
It's a little more nuanced than that, not by a lot.
Not much.
Yeah. to his credit, when Nixon is out and Ford is in, Kissinger kills the racial slur option, and he authors a new plan, one that is a lot better and that is actually focused on spirited opposition to white minority rule in Rhodesia. Kissinger gives a big speech in Lusaka that immediately enrages the right wing of the Republican Party. Basically, he's like, our plan, like under Ford, we want to bring an end to the government in Rhodesia. Like this government cannot be allowed to
right wing is like unbelievable.
Yes, Ronald Reagan.
They're over 7% of the populace.
You can't disenfranchise 7% of Rhodesia.
Have you seen the color of their goddamn skin?
That is essentially what Ronald Reagan says. He denounces Kissinger's plan as undercutting the possibility of a, quote, just and orderly settlement, and argues that it will provoke a massacre of white people.
Boy, I mean, you want to have a head-popping moment. Try to find a good guy in a Reagan-Kissinger debate.
It is an amazing fight where it's just like, I hate everyone involved in this.
We should pay more attention to the white people. I think we need to be careful. I feel like you're both conning me into something. Mm-hmm. I feel like you guys are good cop, bad copping, and you're working for the same outcome.
Look, Henry, I'm not 100% sure why I think you're wrong in this, but you must be.
Yeah.
The other guy's got to be wrong too, though, so I don't really know what to do here.
I don't trust Reagan and hate him, but Kissinger, you're the worst person on the planet. So I'm in what I'd call a bit of a pickle.
Yeah. This is a doozy of an issue.
I'm going to need to go in the other room and do some grunting.
Yeah. So what's happening here is that Kissinger is trying to wrench U.S. government policy in Africa away from supporting explicitly racist regimes in Africa. And Reagan and the right wing under Reagan.
He's trying to get like into a country club or something. There's got to be some angle
I mean, obviously, it's the same reason he does anything, right? He wants to be seen as being the guy who negotiates the end to these big issues. And he's trying to, I think he recognizes by this point that, like, well, Republicans aren't going to stay in power forever, but I, Henry Kissinger, want to have a shot at being in power still. And maybe if I get rid of this bad government in Rhodesia, people will be like, Henry K., let's give him a gig, you know?
Right.
Like he accidentally stumbles into the proper outcome because personally he wants to end it. And so he sees the way to end it is actually the way that's good.
It's we're lining up Henry's personal interests with a prudent solution, and that eclipse is very rare.
Yeah, he's like a guy who like stops a home invader from murdering a family, but it's later found out that it's because he was hitting on a 15-year-old girl, like he was trying to flirt with their daughter and stuff. Like it's like that sort of situation where it's like, well, good, I guess.
Like he stops a robbery because he was peeping through a window that he fell through.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it is hard to find the moral lesson to take out of this. Obviously, the Reagan right loses their minds over what Kissinger's doing here. Pat Buchanan, a former Nixon speechwriter, writes in a column, quote, "It is too early to determine if Secretary of State Henry Kissinger's safari through Black Africa did greater damage to U.S. policy interests or to President Ford's hopes in the remaining primaries."
I mean, again, it needs to stop where like this never ending, what does it do to your reelection chances shit. It's like we are so conditioned to that being how we operate and do everything, as opposed to actually just trying to do the thing that does long-term good. And
well, why would you do the thing that does long-term good? Is my question, Gareth? Exactly.
Yeah, you're right.
Exactly.
You're right. I mean, it's true, but I don't know. It's a foregone conclusion now that everything is viewed through the prism of what does it do to the poll numbers?
Can I just say, take off your masks?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Kissinger did not achieve a tremendous amount in Rhodesia while he was Secretary of State. He got Ian Smith, who's the leader of Rhodesia, to agree to a 2-year turnover from minority rule to an actual democracy. But the way he did this was by assuring Smith that black moderates had agreed that during the turnover, whites would remain in control of the military and police. This was a lie. The black people in Rhodesia, the black moderates in Rhodesia, had never agreed to this. He's just lying to Smith to get him to agree to this.
Awesome.
It also feels like anytime there's like a 2-year deal that you're like, that's just your way of like letting it sort of settle so that you can continue the fuckery. Exactly. Yeah.
And the story of the negotiations is classic Kissinger. He's telling everyone what they want to hear and then kind of weaseling his way into getting people to sign things that make him look good. This write-up from the New York Times sums it up well. Mr. Smith has said he agrees to the 5-point plan he made in public because he had received assurances from Mr. Kissinger that the black leaders had accepted the whole package, including Mr. Smith's addition on the white ministers. In his view, either the blacks have reneged or Mr. Kissinger misled him. The blacks, such as President Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, insist that they did not give their approval to the details of the 5-point plan, only to the general thrust of majority rule in 2 years, leaving it to Britain to work out details later with black and white Rhodesians. They say they would have rejected the proposal for white ministers. Mr. Kissinger and his aides have been evasive. On October 24th, Mr. Kissinger said on television that, "I think everybody is telling the truth."
Wow!
What an incredible guy!
Wow.
That is the best bullshit statement I've ever fucking heard. It's so much better than I believe, I'm not sure, or I don't know.
Or everyone's lying.
It's awesome.
I think
who is the bad guy in Rhodesia? Nobody.
I think everybody's really good. Everyone's really cool.
Why do you need a bad guy?
In the end, the talks collapsed. The war continued on for 2 more years until the Rhodesian Strategic Fuel Reserve was blown up by insurgents and the government was forced to the table. Kissinger and his supporters would later claim that the eventual peace was negotiated on the terms laid out during Kissinger's negotiations. That's kind of questionable.
Sure.
It is fair to say that that by coming in very strongly, and he was very unequivocal about condemning the government of Rhodesia, by doing this as the Secretary of State, Kissinger caused a shift that led to a significant increase in trust of the U.S. by black African nations.
No wonder Reagan was so pissed off.
You know? Yeah, obviously. So it's one of his better moves from an ethical standpoint.
But it's an ego move still, right?
Everything is an ego move. Right. And obviously, it's a sign of how much more fucked up things become, that doing this broadly good thing causes the beginning of the end of his career in politics.
Of course. It's like,
you can't help the black people. That's it. You're done.
Yeah. That's it for you, Kissy.
But to be fair, it worked for me. That's why I did it. We know, Henry, but
we know, buddy. But you know what won't fail to bring peace to Rhodesia?
What's that?
The sponsors of this podcast who orchestrated the destruction of the Rhodesian Strategic Fuel Reserve.
God.
Mm-hmm. That is, we are sponsored entirely by the Rhodesian rebel forces. Here's an ad.
Hi, this is Jo Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And I just sat down with a Minnie Driver.
The Irish traveler said when I was 16, you're going to have a terrible time with men.
Actor, storyteller, and unapologetic Aquarian visionary. Aquarius is all about freedom-loving and different perspectives, and I find a lot of people with strong placements in Aquarius are misunderstood. A Sun and Venus in Aquarius in her 7th house spark her unconventional approach to partnership.
He really has taught me to embrace people sleeping in different rooms, on different houses, in different places, but just an embracing of the isness of it all.
If you're navigating your own transformation or just want a chart-side view into how a leading artist integrates astrology, creativity, and real life, this episode is a must listen. Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
What do you do when the headlines don't explain what's happening inside of you? I'm Ben Higgins, and if you can hear me, is where culture meets the soul, a place for real conversation. Each episode, I sit down with people from all walks of life, celebrities, thinkers, and everyday folks, and we go deeper than the polished story. We talk about what drives us, what shapes us, and what gives us hope. We get honest about the big stuff, identity when you don't recognize yourself anymore, loss that changes you, purpose when success isn't enough, peace when your mind won't slow down, faith when it's complicated. Some guests have answers, Most are still figuring it out. If you've ever felt like there has to be more to the story, this show is for you. Listen to If You Can Hear Me on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
In 2023, a story gripped the UK, evoking horror and disbelief.
The nurse who should have been in charge of caring for tiny babies is now the most prolific child killer in modern British history.
Everyone thought they knew how it ended. A verdict, a villain, a nurse named Lucy Letby.
Lucy Letby has been found guilty.
But what if we didn't get the whole story?
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapses.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby, we follow the evidence and hear from the people that lived it to ask what really happened when the world decided who Lucy Letby was.
No voicing of any skepticism or doubt.
It'll cause so much harm at every single level of the British establishment of this is wrong.
Listen to Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
China's Ministry of State Security is one of the most mysterious and powerful spy agencies in the world. But in 2017, the FBI got inside.
This is Special Agent Regal, Special Agent Bradley Hall.
This MSS officer has no idea the U.S. government is onto him. But the FBI has his chats, texts, emails, even his personal diary. Hear how they got it on the 6th Bureau podcast.
I now have several terabytes of an MSS officer, no doubt, no question, of his life. And that's a unicorn.
No one had ever seen anything like that. It was unbelievable.
This is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to the 6th Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
We're back. Good stuff.
Yes.
Good times. So, yeah, on the whole, Kissinger's last year or so as Secretary of State involved his least number of war crimes per month, which might point to personal growth, but probably points to the fact that he and Nixon had just exhausted the U.S. government's ability to do shady shit. We needed a breather, right? We had to take a breather. It took us a few years to get geared up for Reagan, you know?
Sad. He's been... Go ahead, Dave.
We've just killed so many. There's like no... Like, what do we dig up? We dig them up and kill them again? Like, it's just hard.
We're out of ammunition.
He's like he's no longer a starting QB. He's being traded. He's riding the pine.
Yeah, he's got like, he got a wrist injury, you know?
Yeah, he's on IR for the year.
Yeah. So the last one of his escapades we're going to cover then is Kissinger's relationship with the Kurds.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, baby.
Jesus fucking Christ.
The Kurdish people are the largest ethnic group on earth without a nation of their own. They make up large chunks of southern Turkey, southern Iran, northern Iraq, and northeast Syria. Now, if you look at this kind of broad Kurdistan region on a map, you'll notice a couple things. For one, it's all landlocked, which means if you were, and there was a lot of talk when like colonial powers started to leave the Middle East after World War II that like and promises were in fact made to the Kurds. One of the issues that comes up is that it's going to cause like severe economic difficulties because they would be landlocked. You'll also note that their territories all tend to exist in chunks of states that have wound up fighting each other repeatedly over the last half century or so, right? Turkey and Syria, Iran, exactly. And the Kurds were used on purpose by basically everyone as buffer zones and proxy fighters in these conflicts. Now, starting in the Nixon administration, the Shah of Iran had a problem. He was engaged in an escalating conflict with a new, sexy young dude on the block, Saddam Hussein of Iraq.
Now, can I just say right away, I like both these guys.
They seem like they're both going to go good places. So the Shah decides he wants the U.S. to arm Kurdish fighters in order to give Saddam some trouble and ease up pressure. The ostensible leader of the Kurdish people's struggle in Iraq at this time is a guy named Mustafa Barzani. Now, Mustafa had been leading his people in battle against the Iraqi state prior to Saddam taking power for like a decade at this point, and he had repeatedly begged the United States for aid. The U.S. traditionally did not like Barzani because he had spent a decade exiled in the Soviet Union and had some socialist-y tendencies. But the Israelis and the Shah had experienced great luck in using the Kurds to keep Saddam, who'd taken power pretty recently, off of their back. Kurdish rebels tied up 80% of the Iraqi military during the 1967 war against Israel and are probably a big part of the reason why Iraq did not join in that war. In April of 1972, Saddam signed a treaty of friendship with the Soviet Union. This finally tipped things for the Nixon
Treaty of
administration.
friendship is just a great term. I mean,
it is a nice term. We're buds!
It's like when I started with my BFF when I was 7 in a treehouse.
Yeah.
Hey, can you sign my bro contract?
Yeah.
It means we're bros forever.
It comes with AK-47s.
We are signing the BFF treaty.
So this finally tips things for the Nixon administration, and Kissinger gives the go-ahead for CIA Director Richard Helms to express American sympathy with the Kurds and declare our, quote, readiness to consider their requests for assistance. Next, from a write-up in foreign policy, in early 1974, Saddam violated the terms of the March Accord and unilaterally imposed a watered-down version of autonomy for the Kurds. Barzani responded by traveling to Iran, where he met with the Shah and the CIA's station chief to request U.S. backing for a plan to set up an Arab Kurdish government that would claim to be the sole legitimate government of Iraq. As Kissinger wrote in his 1999 memoir, Years of Renewal, Barzani's request triggered a flood of communications among U.S. officials focused on two questions: whether the United States would support a unilateral declaration of autonomy, and what level of support the United States was willing to give the Kurds. The CIA in particular warned against increasing U.S. assistance. But Kissinger was dismissive of CIA Director William Colby's caution, writing, quote, Colby's resistance was as unrealistic as Barzani's enthusiasm. Nixon ultimately decided to increase U.S. assistance to the Kurds, including the provision of 900,000 pounds of Soviet-made weapons that the CIA had stockpiled and a $1 million lump sum of refugee assistance. In April of 1974, Kissinger sent...
Why the Soviet weapons? Is that to confuse things?
You don't want people seeing them with U.S. weapons. That's going to make it seem like we're involved, Dave.
What an amazing move.
So fucking...
I mean...
It's dope.
I
It's
stole
very
a car
funny.
to commit a murder.
Yeah. So, in April of 1974, Kissinger sent Nixon's orders to the U.S. ambassador in Tehran. This cable was important because it laid out a succinct proclamation of U.S. interests vis-a-vis the Kurds. The objectives, he wrote, were to A, give the Kurds capacity to maintain a reasonable base for negotiating recognition of rights by Baghdad government, B, to keep present Iraqi government tied down, but C, not to divide Iraq permanently because an independent Kurdish area would not be economically viable, and U.S. and Iran have no interest in closing the door on good relations with Iraq under moderate leadership.
But there are I mean, I'm not crazy, but there are landlocked countries that are economically viable.
And Kurdistan has a huge amount of oil. Yeah.
It's such a crazy thing that they're saying. Like, it's fucking insane.
What they are doing, and what Kissinger is establishing in writing here, is U.S. policy towards Kurdish people for more than half a century. And the idea comes down to, we will provide them with aid and weapons when they fight our enemies, but only to such an extent that they achieve minor tactical successes, never enough to allow them permanent autonomy, because that's going to upset the balance of power, right?
My God.
This has been ever since. This is what we do with the Kurds, right? And Kissinger is the guy who lays it out first. Now, Mustafa Barzani made the terrible mistake of believing that the U.S. actually supported his people's independence. For 3 years, the Kurds battled Saddam, sustaining thousands of casualties. But then, in 1975, the Shah and Saddam made peace, and the Shah asked the CIA to cut off all aid to the Kurds as part of a deal with Iraq. The weapons Kurdish fighters had relied upon suddenly dried up. Barzani's fighters were massacred. Thousands fled to Iran, but were turned away by the Shah. Desperate, Mustafa cabled Kissinger, whom he had gratefully sent 3 rugs and a gold and pearl necklace as wedding gifts just months earlier. Your Excellency, the United States has a moral and political responsibility to our people. Kissinger never replied. Later that year, the House Intelligence Committee asked him to justify this betrayal. He responded, "Covert actions should not be confused with missionary work."
Oh my God.
It's so cool.
Like, you don't understand that sometimes I'm also just doing missionary stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The key is that I don't give a shit.
As he stands naked on his rug with just his pearl necklace on.
Speaking of missionary.
So, In the 1976 presidential elections, Ronald Reagan attempted to primary Gerald Ford from the right. The Reagan campaign targeted Kissinger heavily, not for his numerous war crimes, but because of the fact that he had made a detente with the Soviet Union, right? That's why they're angry. Because
it's amazing to be like, you know what? The right's actually got a point. He committed war crimes in Vietnam. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's killed millions of innocent people. No, that's actually not, we're actually fine with all that.
It's the peace stuff we're pissed at.
We're a little angry at some of this peace stuff he's been locking in.
They are, specifically, they're livid that, like, part of the detente means Kissinger was like, we're not going to fuck with Soviet spheres of influence in Eastern Europe. And Reagan and his colleagues are like, well, this means they're just giving up Eastern Europe to communism, you know?
Of course.
Right?
Always communism.
Exactly.
Always. It's fascists hate communists.
I mean, God.
And Kissinger's political instincts and charm were sufficient to fend off an attempt, because there's within the Ford administration, there's an attempt to get Ford to promise to fire him in a second term, largely because they think it'll help him win the primary against Reagan. Right. And Nixon beats everyone here. He manages to get Ford to be like, no, I would never fire Henry Kissinger.
Nixon does?
No, not Nixon. Kissinger succeeds in doing that with Ford.
Okay, sorry. I thought, I was like, if you're listening to Nixon at this point,
there's a lot of Nixon in here. You know, you mix it up sometimes.
He's just in a cupboard in the White House still. Gerald, get me some gin. Also, keep Hank around.
So the fact that Henry wins the fight within the Ford administration means that he becomes like a major marketing term for the Reagan campaign, right? Like they do not stop. In fact, they institute a plank in the Republican Party that year that's basically the anti-Kissinger plank that says like, you will never accept that like communist states should exist anywhere. Essentially, that's kind of what they do.
Okay.
It's just stabbing him in the heart.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. And it's a mark of like how much he fucked things up that you can't even feel good about his downfall because he's replaced by people who just suck even more.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Ronnie felt the spheres of influence that Kissinger had established with the Soviet Union were giving up the Eastern like bloc to communism. He also attacked Kissinger for negotiating with Panama's new government because Henry was willing to give the Panama Canal back to the Panamanian people.
But I mean, they have no right to the Panama Canal.
But yeah,
oh my
why
God,
would
the
they
right
get
wing
it?
Was the right wing was so, and Reagan wrote that thing, but they were so fucking mad
Come
about
on,
it.
no, they have no claim to that canal.
Yeah, Reagan said in a speech, "We built it, we paid for it, and we're going to keep it."
Oh my God!
Refer to our two-parter on the U.S. and Panama for more on that one. So Reagan's primary attempt failed, but by struggling against the rising far right, Kissinger had hammered the final nail into his political career's coffin. In the Ford administration's last days, a dark alliance materialized, and, smelling blood in the water, they acted to cut Kissinger off from any future career in Republican politics. The three main members of this alliance were Paul Wolfowitz from the CIA, Vice President Dick Cheney, and Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld.
Oh my God!
Oh, baby! Yeah!
It's like there's 4 Kissingers.
It's like killing Satan and then 3 winged demons fly out of him.
Yeah. No! It's so funny. It is so funny.
Finally,
God,
some
it's
good
really
guys.
Funny. And in fact, so Kissinger, like Rumsfeld, he sees as almost like a protege. Like he and Rumsfeld are very close. And when Rumsfeld turns against him, Kissinger describes him as, quote, the rottenest person I've known in government, which is Henry, from you, utterly meaningless.
Honestly.
Like absolutely meaningless from you.
I mean, you're not 100%. Allowed to.
Yeah. It's so funny. It's so funny. So it's not funny for all the people who are going to die, but it's funny in like an existential sense. Like if you're an alien looking at all this like a TV show, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, you'd be like, well, why don't they get a good guy? You're like, well, it's really hard to explain, but they just don't.
If you can't laugh at all the people dying, are you an American?
Yeah, no. The answer is no.
By the way, the first time that Nixon heard that Kissinger was working with a guy named Rumsfeld, he was like, well, pour him in a glass for me. Get some ice on it. Sounds fucking delicious. Put some celery in it.
Mm-hmm. So Rumsfeld and Cheney worked within the White House to undermine
my God,
Kissinger.
I can't believe I got to hear their names.
I know, baby, I know. While Wolfowitz is part of the CIA's Team B, Now, Team B is an intelligence review board set up by Gerald Ford as a sop to the far right. The Reagan conservatives, who he's, again, trying to win over and get behind him so he can win the election against Carter, the Reagan conservatives were certain the agency the CIA, had been underreporting Soviet military power, because the Soviet military in like the early chunk of the Ford administration is like, they're actually not doing great. Like, they're like, we really don't need to keep buying a shitload of weapons. Like, they don't have the kind of military assets that we've been saying for years.
We now are getting a shady CIA inside of the shady CIA?
Yes, this is like it's like a Russian nesting doll of the CIA inside the CIA that's even worse than the other CIA. So the Reagan conservatives were certain that the CIA had been underreporting Soviet military power, and Team B was basically, Ford gave them Team B so that they could get new appraisals that showed that the Soviet Union was actually increasing their military assets.
So basically, essentially what would eventually happen with Iraq, where you're like, look, I'm not liking the the non-distilled information. Give me a bunch of bullshit.
That's exactly what's happening, and one of the things that's fascinating here is that, in essence, this is a return of missile gap logic, right? Which Kissinger helped get off the ground. But now, because he supports this détente policy, and that's like his big claim to like fame within, his career, that he reached détente with the Soviet Union, he's on the opposite side of like a missile gap bullshit myth, right?
Oh man,
this is
that
the
moment for him.
Leopards ate my face.
Yeah. I never thought it could happen to me.
Yeah. And then they came for the Kissingers, and there was no Kissingers left to speak for me.
It's the same thing as like Dick Cheney speaking out against the Trump administration and watching his daughter get slandered and stuff.
And it's what it's going to be in 20 years when, Trump is welcomed at a president's funeral and we're going, Trump really wasn't that bad.
I like the way he said we shouldn't nuke everyone on Earth, as opposed to the next guy who nuked everyone on Earth.
Yeah, I mean, Jill Biden handed him a piece of peppermint candy. He's not that bad.
So, former CIA analyst Melvin Goodwin later said of Team B, quote, "They wanted to toughen up the agency's estimates. Cheney wanted to drive the CIA so far to the right that it would never say no to the generals."
Not how estimates work.
And again,
you don't toughen up estimates. Like, they're estimates.
Yeah. Pause this and listen to our episodes on the Dulles brothers, and then realize that Cheney's like, I want them further right than that. That's not nearly right-wing enough.
No. That is the craziest fucking thing we've heard yet.
Bug fuck.
It's like someone in a gangbang being like, I want more orifices.
Not enough holes here.
I can't stick my dick in enough stuff.
So, in December of 1976, as the Ford administration prepared to hand over power to Jimmy Carter, the CIA finished and released a 55-page report. Greg Grandin describes this as, quote, "the right's answer to the Pentagon Papers, a nearly perfect negation of the document Daniel Ellsberg had leaked 3 years earlier. The scholars and policymakers who composed the Pentagon Papers represented the kind of men Kissinger disdained, experts enthralled to facts. In contrast, the members of Team B were admitted ideologues. Its members, as J. Peter Skoblik notes, saw the Soviet threat not as an empirical problem, but as a matter of faith."
Ugh, what kind? I mean, it's a church. It's a war church.
Yeah.
It's also what's happening here, because they are against Kissinger, but as Grandin notes, they're using the kind of logic he used, right?
They're with him on all of the murder, crazy American shit, but they're like, he's just not racist.
They're basically like, we got to get rid of Kissinger so we can worship his tactics properly.
That's exactly what's going on here. And in Kissinger's shadow, Grandin continues, quote, "Previewing what would become known as Dick Cheney's 1% doctrine, Team B interpreted threats with the smallest probability of occurring as likely to occur. Absence of proof of Russian superiority was taken as proof of superiority. Team B's failure to find a Soviet non-acoustic anti-submarine system was evidence that there could well be one," noted by someone with the finance.
Yeah, which makes sense. Of course. I mean, it would be... Of course, how could you not...
Look, there is no evidence that I have EGOTed and won an Emmy and an Oscar and a Grammy. So that's pretty solid evidence that I in fact have.
You have all of them. Yeah, you just need to understand you have all of them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So in December of 1977, the New York Times published a front-page story on the intelligence findings of Team B, which provided legitimacy to the bogus estimates and ensured the next decade of defense spending was geared towards stopping a rising Soviet titan that did not exist.
Oh my
God. Jesus fucking Christ.
Thanks, New York Times. Nailed it on that one.
Star Wars on top of that, which is
Star Wars proceeds directly from
creation.
Yeah. And it proceeds directly, like Team B is laying the groundwork for Star Wars, right? So while Team B's tactics ran directly counter to Kissinger's current positions, they rested directly on what Grandin calls his philosophy of history. Henry had been an advocate on the value of intuition in assessing threats and guiding responses. Historian Anna Hessen-Kahn writes that they used Kissinger's own philosophy to, quote, belittle, besmirch, and tarnish Henry Kissinger.
Had to be a tough spot for Kissinger, where he was like, it's a shame that I've been vilified, but goddamn do I love the way they did it. So me.
Everything, that's why when people, you look at the current situation in Russia and everyone's like, we got to get rid of them. And I'm always like, just remember, whenever the U.S. gets what it wants, it's always worse.
Yeah, every time.
That it can be worse. Like, he can be gone. He's a fucking monster, but don't be surprised if what comes after is really fucking bad.
And the idea of not questioning shit. Like, we're the country who cried war. At some point, you have to be like, look, sorry, everybody, you're really going to need to step up with a lot of evidence because you constantly just fucking invent. I mean, if you are forming organizations inside of bullshit organizations meant to bring, like, that, if there's no submarines, it means there are submarines. I mean, it's just kind of like, and the fact that it's still effective, it's constantly effective.
It's never stopped. This is just a continuation, and it's even like this is a domestic version of what happens everywhere else. We just create more and more worse things.
Yeah,
internally, externally, it's what we do.
Don't worry, we'll make it worse.
Yeah,
that is the promise that the United States makes itself in the world.
Don't worry,
we can fuck this up more. Yeah,
the lifeguard has weights to throw on you.
Yeah,
I mean, we fucking created Putin. If you go back and look at it, like, we were behind all that shit.
Yeah, it's us looking at the bombing of Kiev and going, you know what'll fix this? If Bangladesh doesn't get COVID-19 vaccines.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Which at some point is going to be we will at some point solve something just totally on accident. Like,
So when he left office in 1977, Henry Kissinger would never return to direct political power. He desperately wants to. He really wanted to. So
since then, he has always wanted to.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Now I understand 2016.
Yeah, he really wanted it to happen, but he never quite pulled it off. He eventually started a consulting firm, which he would rapidly grow into an $8 to $10 million a year business for himself.
Oh, Christ.
He makes a ton of money doing this shit.
Of course he goes into consulting. Like,
absolutely.
A consultant's job is to give the worst advice.
Yeah, and to make people feel good, and he's great at that.
I'm a shit oracle.
Now, Walter Isaacson, author of the biography Kissinger, claims that Henry was actually much more ethical in this period of his life than most former government officials who start consulting businesses.
Come on.
He waited an unusually long time to start his business. He avoided for years directly connecting his clients to people he'd worked with in the State Department.
What a low bar.
It may be accurate that he is more ethical in his conduct here than most people, but again, that's a low-ass bar.
Yeah.
Most of his business, the business he does in this period, can be boiled down to, like, he's helping oil and gas and other extractive industries make deals.
So he's like doing nice philanthropical stuff.
Yeah.
So he's just destroying the world.
Well, yeah, absolutely. He's a middleman for the people destroying the world. Let's be clear about it. You know, he's making connections between people who are willing to kill the planet.
And to be fair, he's pining to be in charge of it again.
He is. Probably his most morally questionable moment, in, like, I guess a conventional sense, is that right after the Tiananmen Square crackdown, he shows up on Peter Jennings' show to argue that, like, whatever went on, the U.S. should not impose any economic consequences on China. And this is, again, not due to a principled stand against sanctions. It's because Kissinger was working on a massive business deal that involved the Chinese government and several large corporations. And here's the thing. He's working as a journalist at that point.
Oh, my God.
He is a regular columnist for the LA Times and the Washington Post. And he advocates in both magazines not putting any kind of economic, like doing any economic harm to China over this, which is like a ethical issue as a journalist, because again, he does not disclose that he has any of these business relationships, and it causes a minor uproar. And it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, that's unethical behavior, but also in Kissinger terms, like not even on the fucking radar, right?
To most people, this is an abhorrent act, but congratulations on turning over a new leaf, Henry.
Yeah. Wow, Henry, you've really improved.
You really are less shit.
You waited until after the thing to do something bad.
Yeah.
So in his post-power years, he became even more of an international celebrity. He's actually surprised when he starts doing this job. He's racking up huge amounts of money as like a public speaker, and he and his like accountant expect the value of him as a speaker. Like, well, it's going to decline over time.
People will learn that you're horrible.
It just gets bigger. He just becomes more and more valuable as a public speaker. Now, for some insight into his life in what we might call retirement, I found a New York Magazine article from 2006. Quote, he bonds with Oprah Winfrey over their shared love of dogs. She recommended an artist to paint a portrait of Kissinger's lab. And with Alex Rodriguez over their shared love of the Yankees, he and A-Rod had lunch at the Four Seasons last year. He and his wife of 32 years, Nancy McGinnis, spend every Christmas with close friends Oscar and Annette de la Renta in the Dominican Republic. Asked about the nature of that friendship, given the unlikely connection between a former statesman and a fashion mogul, Kissinger says, they are dear friends of mine. They have no utility.
I'm going to try to kill them.
Yeah, I will kill them at some point.
My plans to kill them soon.
Can we finally agree that Oprah Winfrey is a fucking monster?
Yeah, I mean, right? Oprah buddies with Henry K. Winfrey? Yes.
I mean,
Dr. Phil,
yes.
Dr. Oz, she cretes the fucking
I'm not going to stick around for any Dr. Oz shit talk, but the other ones you got me on.
Don't forget John of God.
Yeah, right under your Suharto tattoo, Gareth, is just Dr. Oz high-fiving Henry Kissinger.
Now, to be honest, this is before he got his show, so I liked him early.
This was just like aspirational, you know?
Yeah, I didn't know. He's a great pal.
So Kissinger became a New York socialite and was reputed to enjoy the city's social scene because, quote, Manhattan's social life is more generous than Washington's political life.
He should not be allowed to pick where he wants to go out. I mean, he should have to get food raised to his cell in a bucket.
It's the same thing as that, the cook, was it David Cook, the one that just died? But it was the same thing. Yeah. Everyone just accepted him in those fucking circles, and it's like, no, he's a fucking monster.
And then Charles Koch is the one who's was on a rehabilitation tour for 6 months. And major news outlets are reporting look, he recognizes they fucked up a little. It's like
he feels bad.
Yeah, he feels bad. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Degenitalize him.
So Kissinger was regularly, and I think probably still is, regularly seen on the arm of Barbara Walters, who calls him a loyal friend. And in fact, she was hanging out with Henry and his wife one night at a dinner party when Kissinger endured one of his few public shamings. It came courtesy as the only real hero of these episodes, ABC News anchor Peter Jennings, who sees Kissinger at a restaurant and is fucking enraged and screams out, "How does it feel to be a war criminal, Henry?"
Nice.
Oh, yes!
Peter Jennings, baby!
And of course, Peter Jennings is gone, so no longer do we get
dies.
That.
Yeah.
Kissinger probably invaded his lungs.
Yeah.
That should happen every restaurant he goes into.
And to all these fucking people.
Yeah, Jennings is basically the only person at Kissinger's social level who calls him out.
And he is a nightly news anchor on a major network. Imagine if you had that sort of vitriol pointed at some of these people that we have in present day, who are, again, not only allowed to walk around, but are still in spheres of power. But Dick, like we were saying about Dick Cheney, George W. Bush should not be in public. He should not be releasing thoughts on Russian invasion.
No, he certainly shouldn't be fucking painting.
Shocking. Yeah, he shouldn't be
getting mints.
He shouldn't have fingers.
No.
His daughter should not be on the fucking Today Show. Like, I don't know. I like strawberry in my margarita.
So I want to continue the story because we're not done with the story of Peter Jennings like calling Kissinger out at a restaurant. And to finish that tale, I'm going to quote from the New York Magazine again. The subject of Kissinger's past sins was very much in the air at the time. Judges in both France and Spain were seeking Kissinger for questioning as the long simmering debate over his connection to Chilean General Augusto Pinochet's brutal killing of dissidents in the 70s returned with a vengeance, not least in Christopher Hitchens' ringing indictment, The Trial of Henry Kissinger. These developments clearly rattled Kissinger, who had preemptively written a lengthy article for Foreign Affairs, decrying the dangerous legal precedent of using universal jurisdiction to try state actors for past actions, the same precedent under which German courts hope to try Donald Rumsfeld. The question by Peter Jennings, how does it feel to be a war criminal, stunned the dinner guests, who included Time Inc. editor Henry Grunwald, who also died last year. And former ABC chairman Thomas Murphy. Grunwald told Jennings the comment was unsuitable.
Yeah,
that's really an unsuitable thing to say.
Was it as unsuitable as fucking bombing Cambodia? Like, Jesus fucking Christ. This is the thing. Manners. They care about manners. They don't care about all the fucking bodies.
And to his credit, when like Grunwald is like, Peter, that's really unsuitable. Peter's like, I don't give a shit. He's a fucking war criminal. He doesn't say that exactly, but he says the emotional equivalent of that.
It's such a bummer.
Barbara Walters later said of the moment, I tried to change the subject, but it was a very uncomfortable moment.
Let's talk about
Kissinger's
Cambodia.
wife, reacted very strongly and hurt. Kissinger said nothing.
Man, it really is like, you see this a lot when like protesters will go into events and they will, they'll have a message, they'll have signs, they'll have something orchestrated set up. And not only will the politician and the people on the politician's dais sort of be like, okay, but the people at the event will be the ones who are like, I'd like a congressional hearing. This isn't the time or place. This isn't the time. It's like, there's no time or fucking place.
Yeah, where's the fucking time and place?
What do you fucking expect? It's all we have at this point is that's the only thing you can really do is try to make them hate living in the world they're ruining.
Yeah, it is a fucking mark of how fucked up any kind of accountability to the political classes in our society that the most consequence Henry Kissinger ever faces is Peter Jennings yelling at him once at a dinner party.
A man who's been dead for 20 years, 15 years. I mean, when Sarah Huckabee Sanders was out to dinner and some people yelled at her, I mean, you saw both sides condemning it.
Some fucking dudes yell at fucking Tucker Carlson from his lawn and it gets called terrorism.
There are Republicans and Democrats who always condemn that sort of stuff. And it's not because people believe in public decorum. It's because they don't want it to show up on their fucking doorsteps.
Right. They don't want like that shit to come back on them.
Yes.
And I'm sure if someone's going to point out Peter Jennings did something fucked up, he must have. He was in media for a very long time. He did 9/11. That was Peter Jennings. He flew those planes right into those towers. I'd forgotten about that, Gareth. Yeah,
that's how he died.
That's
how he died.
Yeah.
But at fucking least he was there and didn't mince words. Just like, you're a war criminal, not like, how does it feel to be here where American boys are dying? But like, no, you did war crimes, Henry Kissinger. Fuck you. Someone has to say it. In his many decades worth of declining years, Henry has focused his remaining powers in an attempt to secure his legacy. In 2003, he opened up his White House archives to a British historian named Niall Ferguson, whose book, also just titled Kissinger, I've cited a few times in these episodes. Ferguson claimed his biography would, quote, provide a warts and all look at the man. But quotes he made about the relationship put the lie to that. And this is Ferguson like writing about how jazzed he is to be hanging out with Henry. I'm in Henry Kissinger's swimming pool talking about his meetings with Mao Zedong, thinking I must be dreaming.
Shit in that pool.
I know. Fucking hell, Niall.
Everyone.
Now, obviously, I have quoted from this biography because of the details, the information Kissinger provides about his early life. It is not without value. It's probably the most detailed look at his childhood we have. It also only goes up to 1968, which neatly avoids the most controversial moments of Kissinger's life, right?
I mean, that's not great.
Even when journalists...
And now we end the story.
And that was the end of Henry Kissinger.
Blah, blah, blah.
Even when journalists and historians that Henry hasn't authorized specifically interview him, they are likely to find themselves enraptured or at least tripped up by his clever wordplay. Bob Woodward, who first interviewed Kissinger in '74, wrote, He wants to control not just what he says, but people's perceptions of what he says. And it's kind of like one long book review where he is arguing with the reviewer of his book or his life or his policy. Seymour Hersh was more blunt in 1983 when he wrote, "He lies like most people breathe."
Wow.
Now,
yeah.
The most comprehensive biography of Henry Kissinger, and the one if you're looking for just a book on Kissinger's influence in like the U.S. and how toxic it was, I recommend Kissinger's Shadow by Grandin. If you want an actual biography of Kissinger's whole life and time and power, I recommend Walter Isaacson's 1992 book Kissinger. I actually think Isaacson is too fair to Henry Kissinger, but even so, even though he clearly like does not wholly condemn the man, I find the book utterly damning, right? Like, the book condemns him even if Isaacson doesn't entirely do so.
Even when you're not trying to fully condemn such a piece of shit, you have no choice.
It's just impossible not to if you're accurate. Right. And I think Isaacson is pretty accurate.
If you lay out the facts, that's it.
Yeah. Now, the best thing I can say about Isaacson's book, Kissinger, is that Henry Kissinger himself complained endlessly about it. He whined to Isaacson's boss, Henry Grunwald, who defended Isaacson and said he felt the book was balanced and down the middle. Kissinger responded, "What right does that young man have to be balanced and down the middle about me?"
I mean,
wow.
Wow. It just shows you. I mean, he should never be in the position where he should be pointing out that other people are crazy.
No. Fuck, like, you don't get to say that, Henry.
Yeah.
No, ever.
As New York Magazine notes, Kissinger denies that exchange ever happened.
I believe Henry. I mean, the guy doesn't lie.
He seems like an honest man.
Yeah, I bet Nixon still had him wiretapped.
And here's a quote from that article that's very funny. "I've never read the Isaacson book," he says, then quickly clarifies. "I've read a few parts of the Isaacson book, which I didn't like, but I understand that there are many parts of the book that are very positive. I missed those," he says with a sly smile.
That is so Trumpy.
I know, it really is, right?
Yeah.
I didn't read it. I read parts 1 through 510.
Yeah.
Isaacson says Kissinger wrote him a series of letters contesting numerous passages. My view, and this is Isaacson, my view is that if Kissinger reread his own memoirs, he would be outraged that they did not treat him favorably enough.
Wow.
Kissinger...
Who wrote this? You did. Yeah. Oh, fuck.
That son of a bitch.
I'm gonna get me.
Kissinger claims to be unconcerned about his place in history. "I cannot affect my legacy," he says. And what does he think his legacy is? "I have no view," he says. "I can't control it by what I say. I tell him I don't believe him. You're not in your 80s yet," he replies. Now, a lot has been made about Kissinger's purported role in the invasion of Iraq. He did apparently urge Bush and Cheney to go through with it. I think crediting him specifically with having an impact on that is not realistic because this is Bush and Cheney. By the time they talked to Kissinger about this, they had made up their fucking minds.
It's probably...
He didn't push them into invading Iraq,
It's similar when the Queens of the Stone Age have Dave Grohl on drums.
Yeah.
You're
exactly.
He's a player for sure, but he's not writing all the songs. I mean, Josh Hommy's got this.
Kissinger's definitely the Dave Grohl of the Bush administration.
Yeah, right. Great drummer.
And I think that rather than actually being a meaningful role in arranging consent for the invasion of Iraq, I think Kissinger was doing here what he always did. He was sucking up to powerful people to telling them what they wanted to hear. And the best example of this comes from 2008, when during a presidential debate, both John McCain and Barack Obama cited Kissinger as supporting their positions towards Iran. Both men held opposite views of what the U.S. should do in regards to that country. You might expect, and I don't think either of them is lying. I think they're both, because I think Kissinger just would be yeah, of course, that's the right call.
That's
absolutely.
Great. So what would the start date be, just so I can put it in my calendar?
Good call, guys.
That's great. You're both right. Yeah, we should invade them and leave them alone.
Yeah. So, as a young law student at Yale, Hillary Clinton had taken part in outraged protests against Kissinger's bombing of Cambodia. As Secretary of State, she praised the astute observations he shared with her and wrote in a review of one of his books, "Kissinger is a friend." And again, the astute observations are Kissinger saying whatever she wanted to do was the right thing to do, right? That's why these people like him and think he's astute. He's not. I think he does today get kind of looked at as this secret power pulling the strings. I think instead he's just the ultimate kiss ass. He's just oh, you're in power now. Yeah, whatever you want to do is the good thing to do. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, 100%. I would tell people, like, if you're young and you don't understand what it means to see a Hillary Clinton standing there with Kissinger, it's no different than in 10 years if all of a sudden your Democrat candidate is standing next to Cheney. Yeah. You're like, what the fuck is going on? And I guarantee you that lost her. A bunch of people didn't vote for her because they saw her standing next to Kissinger.
Yeah.
I guarantee it. I guarantee it.
And I think, though, when you're trying to talk about like his actual influence and like the fucked up things that have been happening in the last couple of decades, it's less in whatever advice he was giving politician A or B, and it's more in the way he shaped the way the U.S. government functions in terms of foreign policy. He centralized power and set the precedent of allowing the executive branch to execute military actions without consent of anyone outside the White House. And obviously, there were like things that were done to restrict the power of the executive branch from doing that, but then those things were all undone after the it's this kind of tug of war thing. But Kissinger, even though he did not set obviously the policy after 9/11 that expanded the executive government's ability to do military shit abroad, he did set the precedent of like how you would actually centralize power in that way within the executive. And he set a lot of ideological and philosophical trends that are still shaping the way the U.S. government functions in regards to foreign policy today.
Sure. Yeah.
And if you're looking for perhaps the most direct and succinct explanation for how Kissinger influenced the world of modern American politics, you can find it in this quote he himself wrote in 1963. "There are two kinds of realists, those who manipulate facts and those who create them. The West requires nothing so much as men able to create their own reality."
Wow.
Wow. What a fucking...
Wow. To not be able to define realists in your two-tier definition of realism is absolutely delusional.
Yeah, for neither of your definitions of realists to involve people who care about material reality.
I heard you say in the first one, I was like, oh, and the second one's going to be realists. It's like, no,
no.
Neither one is realists.
Nope. So that's Henry Kissinger.
It's so unbelievable. And to what you like, you know, his legacy, like you're sort of saying, is not just directly connected to the things he's connected to, because there was no prosecution for what Nixon did.
No.
And there's no prosecution for what Reagan did. And there's no prosecution because we never prosecute and we never actually hold any of these people accountable. You know, you do see the seeds of that flourish now. Like, you can invade. I mean, we're at the point where most people don't even know we've invaded countries we've invaded. Like, at least with Vietnam, people had access to seeing it and being disgusted by it. And then under Bush, it was like, well, we're not going to show the coffins returning. And you see, I mean, it's not just Republicans. You see it under Democratic presidents too. It just is kind of more egregious at times under Republican presidents. But, you know, it's every president gets more powerful, does more, and it does kind of boil down to they're going to be evil. Journalists and media need to recognize what their fucking jobs are. If you're in some of these jobs, like it should not be a popularity contest for access only. You should be beholden to doing good and making these people held accountable, because it's so relevant in what you're talking about with Kissinger that they just let the access to him, because he became a popular figure, completely blind them as to what was actually going on.
Well, it's actually worse than not punishing them. Remember when Obama was elected, everyone was like, these guys have to be tried for war crimes.
Yeah.
And he said, we got to move on. And, you know, we're talking about torture and war crimes and everything else. So, but it went further than that, because they gave Bush like the Medal of Freedom. I mean, there's a picture of fucking Biden hanging on his chest. And they also honored this guy named Henry Kissinger.
Mm-hmm.
The Obama administration
They sure did.
Honored him. So it's beyond not doing anything.
Yeah.
It's not even just him. I mean, it's systemic. It's just, And you know what? If you are one of these people, if you are a fucking anchor at CNN, like if you're Jim Acosta, think of how fucking popular you would be if you did just start using your access to just Be like Peter Jennings. Like,
be like Jennings here.
We are craving this fucking figure.
But they would be immediately fired. I mean,
they would never get to talk to
but,
these guys
but
again.
they would be. But you would also, I mean, having even a moment of that would carry your career. Like, if we had that Peter Jennings shit now, it would go so viral and people would talk about that person endlessly that, I mean, it's like when, you know, when billionaires started competing over being philanthropists, you know, you, at some point, you're so far in the other direction that you're not that far off from just doing the thing that you're supposed to do is going to be such a radical move.
It's very frustrating. Like right now, you have all of these big media figures like moving their shows to Ukraine to be able to film shelling in the distance. And like, obviously, to be a journalist covering combat up close, covering war crimes up close, requires a lot of physical courage. Those like Sky News reporters who got fucking shot and shit, the Daily Beast reporters who got fucking shot. But like being like Lester Holt, like having your show filmed with like shelling in the distance, they have massive security teams. They have massive resources invested into making sure they are in as little danger as they can possibly be. And more than anything, they are out there and doing it for the fucking clout, because that is easy to like pills like I'm brave. What's actually brave is Peter Jennings yelling at Henry Kissinger at a fucking dinner party full of powerful people and making sure that for just a second, he has a moment of accountability. And if one of them was willing to do fucking that to any of these ghouls, I would have a lot more respect than I would of them filming shelling in Kyiv from a mile and a half away.
Yeah, look, there was Wolf Blitzer, who during the first Gulf War put on a helmet and was in Saudi Arabia where Scud missiles were flying, and it's saying how in danger he was. At the same time, there were journalists, American journalists, in the fucking Baghdad hotel being shot at and rocketed by American troops. And those guys didn't work anymore. And Wolf Blitzer got his own TV show on CNN.
Or Brian Williams when he was like the way that he embellished his story about like getting off of a helicopter and taking RPG fire. I mean,
I don't know. We could use another Jennings or two, at least in this regard.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because it's like, what would you? I mean, what would like you're like we want a politician for the people, and it's that's what you wish for. But you're like the step first is to just have these people vilified for the things they should be vilified for.
Yeah, it would be nice if there was a journalist. That's the end of the thought.
Well, honestly, like this was, I mean, just fucking incredible and just such a ridiculous.
He's the worst
dig.
American.
He's a pretty bad one, right?
I don't think there's a worse American. I think he is the worst. Is he? I know that there was talk of like into the countries of like trying him outside of not having him there. Trial. But can he travel anywhere he wants, or is he restricted? He can't.
I'm not aware of. I mean, there may be like one place that he
also now like he's become like this watery figure. So he's kind of like the T-1000, where if you just get close to him, he turns into silver goo and just can go through a drain or something. You can't put a handcuff around a pile of watery goo.
I mean, he is a big part. Like he argues vociferously for why like Rumsfeld shouldn't be able to be charged in, I think, Germany it is, but and he's doing it like
selfishly again.
Then it would put Kissinger in danger, right? Like he's not doing it out of loyalty to Rummy, who he probably hates at this point. Although I don't know that Kissinger can take things personally, actually. So maybe like I don't know. Like
he's like the Bill Walsh coaching tree of war criminals.
Yeah. I don't know what that means.
Well, Bill Walsh coached the 49ers and invented the West Coast offense, and you just see the ripple effect through the NFL for generations and decades.
Yeah, it changed football.
It just changed everything. And it's like, that's what he did. He just was the guy who's like, I came up with a new offense. And it's like, everyone's just reading off of that playbook and tweaking it.
Yeah.
That's a sports reference, Robert, FYI.
Robert, football is when...
Okay, Robert,
That's the title of this episode. Henry Kissinger, that guy Gareth said of football, but of politics.
I liked the two that preceded your I don't know who that guy is.
Yeah, no, I have no idea.
Yeah. Hey, who is that?
Yeah.
It's like it's like in basketball when Phil Jackson made the triangle offense.
Bingo.
That's somebody.
Yeah, triangle diplomacy. It's like the triangle thing. Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Robert's
there we go.
Yeah.
Robert's like, all right, a triangle. Yeah, okay.
And offense is the opposite of defense, right?
That's right.
That's what everyone says. That's what everyone says.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it definitely is. You know,
the team with the most points wins. Yeah.
Well, for sure. That's going to be critical. Yeah, absolutely. And, when the overtime gets a first down, that's causing a problem.
Don't even finish it. You've nailed it already.
No,
you stuck
absolutely.
The
Three-pointer. Absolutely.
That's right. 100%. A 3-point touchdown for Robert.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go, Globetrotters. Well, honestly, thank you for allowing us to enter your dojo and mess around for a little while.
I don't know if thank you is the right...
I thank you.
Probably. I thank you for listening to me read 31,000 words about Henry Kissinger.
Because we talked about it, and I was like, I can't do it because it's not one episode. It's so many episodes.
Yeah. This is like the minimum I think you can responsibly cover Henry Kissinger. Like, we could have done another couple episodes.
Hey, let's do it.
You know what?
Do it.
Gareth, yes.
Let's just riff a couple.
Yeah. We'll get a couple of photos of him hanging out with Jill St. John, joke about his hog. Yeah.
Let's take it on the road.
We can get another 40 minutes of content out of that.
Honestly, we could just keep redoing parts of this on the road for a year and a half.
The Dollop and Behind the Bastards present 3 guys going through shots of Henry Kissinger at fancy parties and talking about the shape of his dick under his pants.
Honestly, it should work.
Looks like he was having a chub day today. What do you think, Dave?
Well, I'll tell you what, the walnuts on the table aren't the only one I'm focused on. Look at those tennis shorts.
This is how we make our millions.
Well, genuinely, thank you for this.
I am generally super scared. Having watched how Colin Powell was treated.
Oh, yes.
When he died, be scared of how people are going to react to Kissinger's death. Because you're going to watch liberals be like, he was fucking awesome. And you're just like, everything about him was bad.
Yeah.
W.
It'll be fun.
Any pluggables at the end here?
Sure, yeah. Listen,
absolutely.
Well, first of all, we've got the Kissinger. We should do Kissinger live, and we should use the Kiss font.
Mm-hmm.
And we should also wear like the Kiss makeup, and we should just do Kissinger.
Yeah,
we will be in Australia and America, the best country on earth. We'll be in Australia in the middle of April to May. You can go to dolloppodcast.com for all that information. We're all over the place, and then I am doing stand up in Australia and also over the summer. So you can go to GarethReynolds.com for all that information, and you can follow us on social medias with our I'm at Reynolds Gareth. Dave's at Dave_Anthony. On Instagram. I'm at Reynolds Gareth on Twitter. Dave's at Dave Anthony on Twitter. And woo!
All right.
Thank you for having us again,
motherfuckers.
Sophie and Robert.
Yeah. Everyone, go pray for Henry Kissinger's painful demise.
Yes.
Yeah, let's all hope that Tim Allen takes him out somehow. He smuggles coke into a party Kissinger's at, and it just blows out the old man's heart.
Or he just starts doing War Improvement with Kissinger as his character.
Amazing.
Yeah, Kissinger would be the owl. He's the owl.
Right.
No, you gotta bomb Cambodia, Tim. All right. That's a note there. Hi, everybody. Robert Evans here, and my novel, After the Revolution, is available for pre-order now from akpress.org. Now, if you go to akpress.org, you can find After the Revolution. Just Google akpress.org, After the Revolution. You'll find a list of participating indie bookstores selling my book, and if you pre-order now from either of these independent bookstores or from AK Press, you'll get a custom signed copy of the book, which I think is pretty cool. You can also pre-order it in physical or in Kindle form from Amazon or pretty much wherever books are sold. So please Google AK Press After the Revolution, or find an indie bookstore in your area and pre-order it. You'll get a signed copy, and you'll make me very happy.
What if mind control is real?
If you could control the behavior of anybody around you, what kind of life would you have?
Can you hypnotically persuade someone to buy a car?
When you look at your car, you're going to become overwhelmed with such good feelings.
Can you hypnotize someone into sleeping with you?
I gave her some suggestions to be sexually aroused.
Can you get someone to join your cult?
NLP was used on me to access my subconscious.
Mind Games, a new podcast exploring NLP, aka Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Is it a self-help miracle, a shady hypnosis scam, or both? Listen to Mind Games on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You can scroll the headlines all day and still feel empty. I'm Ben Higgins, and If You Can Hear Me is where culture meets the soul. Honest conversations about identity, loss, purpose, peace, faith, and everything in between. Celebrities, thinkers, everyday people, some have answers, most are still figuring it out. And if you've ever felt like there has to be more to the story, this show is for you. Listen to If You Can Hear Me on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby, we unpack the story of an unimaginable tragedy that gripped the UK in 2023. But what if we didn't get the whole story?
Evidence has been made to fit.
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapses.
What if the truth was disguised by a story we chose to believe?
Oh my God, I think she might be innocent.
Listen to Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Special Agent Regal, Special Agent Bradley Hall.
In 2018, the FBI took down a ring of spies working for China's Ministry of State Security, one of the most mysterious intelligence agencies in the world.
The Sixth Bureau podcast is a story of the inner workings of the MSS and how one man's ambition and mistakes opened its vault of secrets.
Listen to The Sixth Bureau on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.